Hi, I'm Lauren.
And I'm Matt.
And this is Publish and Prosper,
Where publishing, e-commerce, and marketing collide.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Publish and Prosper. This is episode 51, and today we are going to spend the entire episode subtly disagreeing with each other over how to pronounce the word niche.
Now I see why you wanted that topic title. Like, I kept thinking, like, why is she sticking that in there? Like, I know that that's a small part of what we're talking about. Now I get it. Okay. You were baiting me, as usual.
Always. I'm always baiting you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will forever say it's niche.
That's fine.
I am not French or any other European dialect that feels the need to call it niche.
We don't have to.
Tropes. Well, what other bougie words do you want to throw into this episode?
Would we call tropes bougie?
I do.
Okay.
I mean, they're necessary, but
Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
I just think tropes is one of those words right now that's like the thing that people say. Like, you know, younger kids, all last year, all I heard was Riz.
You're comparing tropes and Riz?
I think this year I've heard tropes enough to qualify as one of those words like Riz or brain rot or whatever else you millennials talk about.
Did you see that brain rot was?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's disturbing.
I know.
I don't understand why. Is it dictionary.com or Webster's that is doing that word of the year thing?
I thought it was Miriam.
Merriam-Webster, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't I say Webster?
Oh, it was you did. But there's a bunch of different ones.
Oh. Well, there's one that makes the news every year, and I think it's
yes. So there's Oxford said brain rot was the word of the year.
Okay.
And apparently dictionary.com said the word of the year was demure.
Oh, God.
Yeah, actually. Especially considering people don't know what it means.
Yeah. So Dictionary of Matt would say the word of the year is tropes
Okay.
or trope.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sorry it bothers you so much. I don't know what else you want me to say.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares. What do your bracelets say today?
What do my bracelets say today? So I feel like I had done a better job planning ahead this morning because my bracelets are all kind of Disney themed today. Not really. This is the End is one of them. That's not Disney themed. But then Foolish Mortal and Take the Stairs are the other two. But Spotify Wrapped came out this morning, and I was, it was my annual humbling by a stupid software on my phone. And I should have chosen some representative bracelets for that today instead.
So you've seen your Spotify Wrapped already?
I have.
Do I need to even guess if it's anything besides Taylor Swift or Panic at the Disco?
Fall Out Boy.
Really?
Panic hasn't made my list in a few years, actually. I've been pretty bummed out by them. My top 5 were Taylor Swift, Fall Out Boy, Post Malone, Muna, and Sabrina Carpenter.
Huh. I don't think I've gotten my Spotify Wrapped email yet.
Oh. Well, I was compulsively checking the app this morning, but, it's more along the lines of, somebody will text me and be like, look, Taylor Swift was my number 1 artist. I listened to 5,000 minutes of Taylor Swift this year. And I'll be like, cool, I listened to 22,000 minutes of Taylor Swift.
Oh, my God. It is in my app, though. Mm-hmm. Why do they got to put all this intro stuff in here?
I don't know. They really put a lot of work into it. And I definitely want just like a cut to the chase button.
Says I spent 12,394 minutes this year listening to podcasts.
Oh, look at you.
I don't realize
I don't use Spotify for podcasts, so I don't have those metrics.
You don't?
I use Apple Podcasts.
Huh.
I did use Spotify for a while, and I kind of liked it better, but one of the podcasts that I listen to, I'm a Patreon subscriber, and there isn't, or at least at the time that I set it up, there wasn't a way to integrate the Patreon feed into Spotify. You had to do it on Apple Podcasts. And once I set that up, I was just too lazy to ever go back and change it. So I use Apple Podcasts for all my podcasting now.
Okay. I did find my top artist. It took a little while. But my number 1 top artist was The Cure.
That feels so appropriate.
Number 2, anybody who knows me could guess, was the Smiths. Mm-hmm. Number 3 is the Deftones. Number 4 is Knock Loose. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think that you're ever allowed to give me a hard time for my taste in music ever again, because that's also very predictable of you.
Well, yeah, I didn't know that was coming out today.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy how that's such a big thing now.
I know. It's actually, I think it's a fantastic example of like marketing working successfully, like truly, truly viral marketing, because it actually is just Spotify every year being like, hey, reminder that we track all your data meticulously and we know all these things about you and we have all this information about you. And instead of people being like, oh no, my data, people are like, give it to me sooner. Let's go. I want it.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a lesson in packaging and marketing, but do you know the story behind how that came about?
No.
So the first Spotify, the idea was by an intern at Spotify.
Okay.
She had this idea, and in fact, somebody can fact check me here if you want, but I don't think she's with them any longer, and I think she left Spotify shortly after giving them this idea, but it was an idea from an intern that was there. I don't remember if she was paid or unpaid. It's probably irrelevant, although it is relevant if she was an unpaid intern.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. She deserves
but nonetheless, yeah,
financial compensation for this idea.
Yeah, it was an idea from an intern at Spotify, and it turned out to be probably the biggest thing Spotify's ever done.
Wow.
Even bigger than when they bought, Find Away Voices to do audiobooks.
Yes.
Like, this Spotify rap thing is probably one of the biggest things not only they've ever done, but in general in the downloadable music industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody talks about it. Even the people that are like, I don't care what your Spotify Wrapped was. Don't put it on your Instagram stories. Yeah. I'm like, well, why are you looking then? Like, what do you mean you don't care? You're just jealous that you use Apple Music and not Spotify, and then you don't get one.
Yeah.
So anyway, share your Spotify Wrapped with me because I'm always curious. And I will not share mine in response because it's, once again,
you want to tie this back into our topic today?
Sure. Why? You got an easy way to tie it back in?
It's a little bit of a stretch, but it might work.
Go for it.
You can use people's Spotify Wrapped to find out if they're your target audience or if they live in your content niche.
You know what? Actually, I don't disagree with that.
I'm just going to leave now.
Episode done. Fastest we've ever done. Great work, team.
Yeah, let's piggyback off of Spotify's Wrapped, and we'll just...
Sure.
Yeah, somebody should do that. We should do a Lulu Wrapped for all of our Lulu customers.
I did see...
or Unwrapped.
I did see a funny TikTok the other day that was somebody, like, acting out what it would look like if they did a Kindle Unlimited Wrapped.
Oh my God. It would be X-rated.
Exactly. Well, that's what it was. It was like, never mind. We can't publicly share that. We know we can't share that either. We can't share that either. So, but it could be cool. I mean, I always love, this is not the episode topic, but like as a data nerd, I love seeing like end of year report. Like I'm really looking forward to doing like my end of year reporting.
Yes.
For the podcast and for like seeing what other people in the company have been working on and seeing like what trends we've seen. I just outlined, here's a spoiler for our next episode. The last episode that we're doing for this year is going to be like a 2024 retrospective in publishing and stuff like that. And as I was outlining it, I was going through like, some of the like bi-weekly emails that I get or like meeting topics we've had, stuff like that, where I'm looking through like what were the hot topics from the year. And I always kind of love doing that retrospective on the year. So look forward to that episode coming next.
I'm glad you like doing that because that means I'll get yours on time, right? Your yearly metrics?
Always. Okay. What do you mean? I'm the one that turned in like 100-page reports for social media every year.
When you were social media, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get any stats from podcast.
They're weekly. What do you mean?
Where are they at?
Literally in the spreadsheet that we share.
Really?
Yeah.
Are they good? If they're not good, I don't want to see them. We got 5 downloads a week.
We have more than 5 downloads a week.
Nice. Let's have a party.
Okay.
All right. We probably should talk about creating a path to success.
Yes.
And doing that through identifying your target audiences, your ideal customer profiles, personas, however you want to refer to this, which all kind of starts with identifying your content niche.
Yes, it does. this is something that I think that we've talked about a lot, and it's not an original thought either. Not gonna lay claim to that one in any way. And I'm actually even going to recommend a webinar that I'm going to link in the show notes. We hosted our friend Joe Polizzi earlier this year for a webinar, and if you look at the title of it, you might not think that it's relevant to you, depending on what genre you're writing, because it's called How to Create a Multi-Million-Dollar Business from Your Business Book. But it is actually incredibly interesting and I think useful for any author of any genre that is interested in growing their brand, because Joe talks a lot about the idea of finding your niche and your content tilt and trying to understand like exactly what it is that you are specializing in and what you are giving to your audience and like what your tilt is on this. You know, he then goes on to talk about it specifically in the idea of business books, but the first part of that at least is, I think, very relevant to anyone.
All of it is because core marketing principles exist outside of any relevancy to genre or topic.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, like we said at the top of this is really an episode about some core marketing tactics that really need to be done ahead of time so that you can ensure a successful path to book sales and writing more books. So yes, Joe's presentation was amazing. It does focus a lot on some of those core principles of finding your niche area, creating those audience personas and profiles, and then how to, create content from there that will be relevant to those personas and those audiences. So yeah, it doesn't matter if it's fiction, nonfiction, reference, Bibles, it doesn't matter. Like these are core marketing sort of principles and tactics that everybody can apply to charting their own path to success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that's really important to understand if you're listening to this. Well, first of all, if you're listening to this and you're like, this doesn't relate to me, thank you. I don't know why you're listening to this if it doesn't relate to you, but thank you. But also, more importantly, it does.
Maybe they just want to hear you pronounce the word niche wrong.
Maybe they just want to hear your sparkling wit.
We know that's not true. They're here for my sunny disposition.
Cheerful can-do attitude.
That's me.
That's me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically what you're asking yourself, regardless of what you're writing, what you're publishing, whatever, is what problem does my book solve for its readers? Yes.
So again, for fiction, the solving the problem equation is it's entertainment, it's escapism. So, what am I writing that is going to make them feel entertained and help them escape into the world of what I'm writing about? Yeah. Nonfiction, you're actually answering that question of what problem am I solving. For fiction, the problem you're solving is entertainment, escapism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But beyond that, go further than that and narrow it down as much as possible. So that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about like finding your niche. Like how deep can you go down the rabbit hole? What?
Nothing. How deep can you go down the rabbit hole?
How deep can you go down the rabbit hole into identifying exactly what makes your content unique and something that will you are the only person that can then provide the solution to this specific problem?
I love it. No notes.
Wow. Ready for an argument on there somehow.
No. I think that, for this particular section of talking to people about how to find their niche, for fiction authors, I think for the most part, it's fairly self-explanatory. You're going to write what you're most comfortable writing, what you're interested in. Mm-hmm. We're not suggesting that you write something you're not interested in just to appeal to a particular audience in the genre of fiction, right? However, what we're saying is if you do write fiction, whether that's fantasy, sci-fi, thrillers, horror, whatever, what we're saying is, by doing a little extra research on your ideal audience type, by finding that niche, you may be able to carve out a little section of that market share that you can command and own outside of every other, let's say, science fiction author. So if you can add an element or a twist to your science fiction, that you enjoy, that you also you see other people kind of, asking for, or, somebody might be commenting on a science fiction book they read, and they might make a comment that speaks to one little tiny part of that trope or story or plot line or anything that was in there. That might be a signal to you like, oh, that's a whole, that's another click deep into sci-fi that I'm happy to explore, and that could be a lot of fun. And so you've just established a niche where you can get in there and really own that space and own that market share, because otherwise you're trying to share market share or market space with thousands, if not tens of thousands of other authors. And that's okay. That's what everybody is doing to a degree, but marketing and selling in a space where there's tens and thousands of others writing stuff that's very similar to yours is a lot harder than niching down and maybe carving out a little bit of that space just for you and your, sort of subcategory of science fiction or, romance or horror or whatever.
Yeah. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here. And also, I really did intend to talk more about nonfiction in this episode than fiction. I really was committed to that idea. But the immediate example that's coming to mind right now is fiction. So, sorry. I was reading reviews on a book the other day on Goodreads, and it was a hockey romance. And 2 back-to-back reviews that I read, like literally one after another. One of them said, not enough hockey in this hockey romance. The next one said, too much hockey in this hockey romance. So an important thing for you to understand as you're kind of like finding your niche and finding your audience and getting to know your readers, which we will talk more about in a little bit, is understanding that your book is not for everybody. And that's okay. And if you're trying to write a book that's going to please everybody, you're going to wind up writing something that is too broad, that is not focusing in on one like specific tilt and actually like committing to what you can do. And so, if you want to write a hockey romance that doesn't have a lot of hockey in it, you're going to speak to that community of people. And it's okay that some people are going to say, well, not enough hockey in this one. But like, that wasn't the point. As long as you know that, as long as you know what it is. So, it's looking at the market that you're writing in and trying to figure out like, where are the gaps?
To go back to Joe Polizzi, and you were talking about him, his success came on the heels of being one of the very first people to really talk about and coin the term content marketing. And so at the time, there wasn't a lot of content marketing that was happening in marketing in general. Mm-hmm. It was all still very programmatic. There was a lot of like just digital stuff that was happening that was very formulaic, spend more money to make more money, these types of things. And so by being one of the first to talk about content marketing, but then continuing to niche down into that as more people came into that space is what kept him relevant and successful. And then more recently, you have, others who have taking that and niche down even further. So now, Brian Piper is another author. He just released a book on the heels of a previous book of Joe. So Joe wrote a book called Epic Content Marketing, and there's a couple of versions of it. And Brian helped write some of that. And then what Brian did recently, because Brian is in higher education, he works for a university, he wrote Epic Content Marketing for Higher Education. So he niched down into content marketing specifically for higher education because, believe it or not, universities and colleges and schools, they have problems with marketing.
Yeah.
So again, this is all just examples to help you understand, like, how do you continue niching down? Like, you might say, well, I write in horror. That's my niche. That's my genre. No, there's deeper subcategories or subgenres or niches of horror where you could move into that space, have a lot of fun writing, and command the full amount of market share, or as much of it as you can, because you'd be one of the only people kind of writing in that way. So, I think we're spending a lot of time here, but I think that the concept is, once you think you've arrived at what your topic or genre or category is, try to go one click deeper.
Yeah.
And if you can still go another click deeper, then keep going. It's a lot easier to go and scale niche down as tiny as possible, start with that audience, build a good following and sales record, and then start scaling back outward, right?
Yes.
So if you scaled down 3 times in the genre of horror and you got down to some really niche style of horror, right? it's a lot easier to scale back up to a general category of horror once you've established yourself.
Yes.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So once you know your niche and once you know where you're writing, you got to figure out who you're writing to.
For?
No. I guess. Sure. Both. I think they both work. Who you're writing for or who you're writing to. I think they both work. You need to know who your audience is, and you need to know who your ideal reader personas or ideal customer personas are.
Mm-hmm.
So, gonna throw a suggestion out there that some people may or may not like. This is a great place to use AI.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. This is what we talk about when we talk about using AI in publishing. And, people are like, I don't want to read a book that's written by AI. I don't want AI to be writing original content for me.
Nobody
I don't
does.
either. Nobody does. Absolutely not. That's not what we're recommending that you do at all. But using an AI tool like ChatGPT to help you create customer personas is a great use of that tool.
Well, or any AI tool for that matter. But
Sure.
Yes, we've said this before and we'll scream it from the rooftops as long as we have to. But use AI to do, excuse me, all of the stuff that you don't like to do. One of the things we hear most commonly from authors at events and in general is that, yeah, all this stuff sounds great, but I don't want to do it. I don't want to do marketing. I don't want to do sales. I don't want to build my own website so I can sell direct. I want to do all those things, but I don't want to do them. That's great. Use AI to do all that stuff. Yep. That's what AI is great for. Don't use AI to create stories or things like that. We'll never say never, but we don't advocate for that. But use AI to do all the stuff you don't want to do.
Yeah, that's absolutely the point. And I will link a blog post in the show notes that Paul wrote earlier this year about using AI to create reader personas.
And you mentioned ChatGPT. That's a great one for sure. And you can get like a great ChatGPT plan for $20 a month, which is worth it if you learn how to use ChatGPT to do a lot of the stuff you don't want to do. There's also Claude and Perplexity and a few others that are moving along pretty well and fairly trustworthy, as trustworthy as AI could be. But do your own homework, pick one you're comfortable with. I would stick with one of those for now instead of going with AI tools made specifically for certain things, because I still think there's a lot of room for growth there. And so, a lot of those tools are coming onto the scene. Oh, this is a great AI tool for managing your finances. And then 2 months later, they're either out of business or they've pivoted and now they're doing something totally different. So I would stick with one of the major ones for now until you get comfortable using AI tools, and then maybe, branch out and find specific AI tools for certain things. But yeah, for sure.
I think there's also just like a good rule of thumb for using these. If you're still experimenting with using AI, or if you're still like, I haven't been using it, but I want to try. For me, I think of it as something like if I'm using it for like internal use, instead of, it's not something that's going to be customer facing for you. It's not going to be the book content that you're writing or your cover copy or social media posts. I mean, you can use it for all those things, but I wouldn't encourage you to. But like, this is like your reader personas that you're going to create are just for you. You're using that to inform marketing decisions and writing decisions and publishing decisions, but that's not something that you're ever going to share publicly. That's just for your own like internal reference. So that's something that's great to use AI for, because it doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay if it's a little bit inaccurate. It's okay if it's a little bit like rough and tumble or something like that. But like, you're the only one that's ever going to see it. So it doesn't matter if it's perfect. It's just kind of a reference point for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other way that you can kind of make them a little more perfect, again, even if you're, again, never sharing them outside of yourself, is to keep them up to date by keeping track of your actual customer data.
Well, you can only do that if you're what?
Selling direct.
That's right.
We have done a whole episode on using your customer data. So I'm not going to reiterate that one over and over again. Just go listen to it. But it's a great way for you to kind of just, continue to fact check, because you should. these aren't things, all the things that we're talking about in this episode right now, they're not like one-time practices. Like, it's not like when you first start writing, you're going to pick one content niche and then you're just going to live there forever and never grow from that. Or you're going to do, like, you're going to create reader personas one time very early on in your career. And a decade from now, you're going to assume that you're still writing to that exact same audience of people. Like, that's, you should be doing this. I'm not going to say regularly, but at the very least periodically, you should be updating your own understanding of who your readers are, who your audience is, who you're writing for, who you're writing to. Maybe those are different things.
Well, but it's all part and parcel of that concept of treating what you do as a business. And these are things that every business has to do to keep growing and stay relevant and sustainable as a business. So again, if your thing is being an author and that's what you want to do is be an author and you want to make a living from that if you're not already, these are things that you need to eventually get comfortable with and do in some form or another so that you can continue to stay relevant and grow. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And they might just also inform like decisions that you make about your business. You know, you don't know. Now I'm just going deeper into the why customer data is an important thing, which I think I'm not going to say that we've talked that to death because I don't think we have, and I think we'll continue to talk about it. It's obviously something that we think is very important, but might I recommend Might I recommend that you go listen to episode number 47 if you're curious about why customer data matters?
Yes, you might.
May I? Might I?
That was just weird, but
I don't
go
know.
right ahead.
Everything about that was, I don't know. This is what happens when we record before lunch. This is my fault. I'm sorry. The point is that this is something that's going to be useful for you to have. It's something that's going to be useful for you to keep checking and referring back to, whether it's because you're working on writing a new book, whether it's because you're working on adding new product lines, whether it's because you're trying to grow your business. If you're trying to reach a new audience, a different audience, like I said earlier, I was working ahead a little bit and working on kind of a 2024 retrospective. And I was reading through, Written Word Media puts out an annual indie author survey every year. It's mostly fiction authors, but it is an interesting read anyway. And I was reading through it, and one of the things that they were talking about in there was the number of survey responses that were something along the lines of like, I'm really sick of marketing. I feel like I do the same marketing things over and over and over again, and they never work, or like things that used to work aren't working anymore. And like, that's kind of where this stuff comes in, where it's like, if you feel like you've exhausted your marketing efforts and like things that used to work for you aren't working anymore, and you are looking for ways to like inject new life into your marketing, but you're also really burnt out.
Well, first of all, that's normal, by the way.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
As people who are marketers for a living and have been doing this for a long time, that's normal. Welcome to the life of a marketer, not an author. It is normal. It's something that constantly changes, especially as new technology comes into play. But in general, a large part of marketing is using tools and platforms that are algorithm-based. So, of course, there's burnout there because things are constantly changing. So that's normal. Just know that.
Yeah.
And don't feel bad when you feel that way, because even as marketers, sometimes we hate being marketers. In fact, I would say more often than not, I love marketing and I hate being a marketer.
That's fair. Actually, that's very reasonable. But yeah, I think this is, if you're feeling that way, aside from Matt's very good advice on that, this is your opportunity to say, okay, like, let me do a little bit of a deep dive into who my audience is, who my ideal readers are, who my actual readers are, and let me see how I can kind of adjust my focus to speak to these people. Or if I'm looking at this and I'm realizing that my ideal reader is a little bit different than where I actually see my actual readers are, like, okay, how do I shift my focus to talk to those people that I identified as my ideal readers without also losing my existing readers? as well.
Yeah, I would argue that if you have existing readers that you've managed to bring into your ecosystem that really like what you're doing, you're less at risk of turning them away unless
Sure.
you just drastically pivoted from the type of content you write. But, and you can always think about spin-off series that, attract those other buyer personas or customer personas or reader personas, whatever you want to call them, while still not affecting your core audience too. So again, it's always just about niching and figuring out, where's my next audience or group of people going to come from. Everybody's concerned with growing their audience, growing their customer base. All these things are tied together, getting that customer data, using that customer data to turn around and remarket and grow some more. It's a big cycle. And so, yeah, I think using these customer or audience personas to better understand, not only existing, but new areas that you can push into. That's how you grow.
Exactly.
It's not fun sometimes. It's not easy sometimes. And other times it is, but it's necessary for growth.
I mean, having a job isn't always fun. Well, that's not true, actually. This job is pretty fun. But
I was just about to say we're hiring for a podcast host if anybody wants to sit up here and argue with me for an hour a week.
having a job is still work, even when it's fun.
Yes, it is.
And if you are treating your writing career as a job, which you should be, it is going to involve some work.
Well,
whether it's your author brand or whether you have your own brand that you're writing a book as like a lead magnet or whatever for that brand, like it's all work. It's all a job and you have to treat it that way.
I think now we're just getting down to semantics or things, you know what I mean? Calling something a job versus, hey, this is my business. This is what I do. Like, to me, they're kind of different sort of mindsets, but nonetheless, yeah, I agree. We should move on.
I'm glad you agree with yourself that we should move on.
Well, I was agreeing with you too. I was just saying,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So once we figured out who
I feel like all you wanted to do today was argue.
Well, no.
Okay.
I thought this was going to be a much smoother episode, actually, personally.
Why is it not smooth already?
Maybe because we're both a little spicy. Again, we're doing this before lunch. We don't usually.
I am a little spicy. Okay.
More importantly, once you've figured out what your niche is and who your ideal readers are, how do you use those things to identify your target audience? Because that's really where we're going with all of this, right? Is that you've kind of put in the work to create these like specific profiles and spaces and whatever of like, okay, these are like my very specific areas of focus, whether it's content or audience. How do you use that to kind of identify a larger group of people that you are actually going to be targeting with your content?
Yeah, and again, a lot of this is also based on the assumption that you're pushing into a new audience per se. Personas and audience, there's a lot of overlap there. They're almost kind of the same thing when you're talking about finding new readers to bring into your ecosystem. A persona is basically, for the most part, an audience or comprises, an audience. You could have multiple personas within an audience, sure. But most of the time, especially in fiction, nonfiction's different, but in fiction, most of the time, whatever persona you create, that's pretty much what that particular audience is comprised of, that one persona for the most part. Nonfiction, you'll have lots of personas within a particular audience, but you need all these things to start building out or targeting your audiences. So the same way you started with your personas, it's kind of the same exercise with an audience as well. Because there can be multiple personas within an audience, there's lots of questions you're going to want to start asking about identifying, a particular audience. You have listed here the things we learned in grade school, right? The who, what, when, where, why, and how. And that works. That's fine. Yeah. But understanding, how these questions relate to an audience, I think is important.
Right.
So we can go through those if you want.
What, the who, what, when, where, why, and how?
Yeah, I mean, you listed them out. You might as well.
All right. So basically okay. So I think that it's important for you to be able to answer a list of questions all I want to do right now is sing the song from Spy Kids 2, and I'm not going to, but it's so fine.
I wish you would.
I will not.
All right.
I'll link it in the show notes. You guys can all see it. But you want to be able to answer basically a whole series of questions about your target audience. And if you can't answer that, that's probably one of the first things that you want to do here is figure out how you get the answers to these questions and actually be able to answer them. You should know who your customers are, who your followers are. If there's a discrepancy between those two, you want to understand why there's that discrepancy. Does it matter? What can you do to turn your followers into customers? Or perhaps the other way around, depending on what your priorities and your goals are. You want to know what they want and what they need. And also if those are the same things, if you can provide those things for them. You want to know where your audience spends most of its time. Where are they looking for, whether it's new books or solutions to problems, more information. If you are writing about a subject that the main audience base is hanging out on TikTok and you're promoting your content very heavily on Reddit, what does that do for you?
Yeah, and I would argue as you're going through these, though, too, the most important ones, especially for fiction authors, but even for nonfiction, would be the what, where, and how. Mm-hmm. So, again, what is it they're looking for? What type of content? And we're going to assume in this case, if it's fiction you're writing, we're going to assume they're looking for the kind of fiction you write. And if it's nonfiction, obviously, we talked about you're solving some sort of a problem for them.
Yeah.
But the where is really the most important, I think, out of all those, and even those three that we narrowed it down to, because that's what everybody's hoping to get out of this is like, where do I find more readers and buyers?
Right.
And that's really what we're trying to get you to, is that point where you understand how to find more of those where are those areas, whether, again, it's particular social media channels or groups on Facebook or somewhere else, or even, in person, in real life things where you may be able to connect with more readers that are into what it is you're writing, or, if you're nonfiction, how to land more clients and things like that. But, and then lastly, the how, once you've found them, the how is, how do you connect with them? You can't just roll up like Steve Buscemi and like, hey kids, I'm cool. Let's talk about this. You know what I mean? Like, how are you connecting with them? We need to put that Steve Buscemi meme on there too.
All right, I got it.
Where he's holding the skateboard and he's looking all crazy.
Hello, fellow kids.
Yeah. Anyways, how are you connecting with them, right?
Yeah.
It can be really awkward and intimidating to push into a new space and to try and introduce your content to a new audience, but understanding how to connect with them, how to start those two-way conversations, having a space where you're comfortable to do that, I think is important.
Yeah. I think it's all important, even just like when it comes to simple things. Like I love watching, like I spend a lot of my time on TikTok watching like clips of podcasts. So like, I don't want to go listen to the whole thing, but I'll listen to I'll watch like a 5-minute video and I'll watch I will intentionally look for long videos that it's like, I'm washing the dishes and I'm going to put on this one video of this one podcast episode that I'm just going to get a little snippet of what they were talking about in the episode. And it's only going to need to last me for the amount of time it's going to take me to wash the dishes here, and then it's over. And so I look for those longer form videos. And then I was talking to our social media manager recently, and I said, hey, like when I provide you like video clips for podcast episodes, like for you to share on social and stuff, like how long do you want them to be? And she said about 15 seconds. And I was like, oh, that's totally subverting my not expectations, but like that's not like I did not have the correct understanding of what she was looking for in the content that she was creating and publishing. So like that was important, and I have tried to now give her shorter clips. So like, our content strategies are aligning a little bit more and stuff like that. It's even just the little things like that in the how and the where and the what. Like this is important for you to know. Or maybe you do find out that your particular target audience is very into long form video content, or not long form video content, because I think an hour-long podcast episode is considered long form, not a 5-minute TikTok, but longer form, short form video content. Maybe.
In today's, or by today's standards, 5 minutes is probably long form content.
That's so
especially
depressing.
for your generation and below.
Hey,
My 14-year-olds, if anything is longer than 5 seconds, they're swiping anyway. So I don't
lump me in with your 14-year-old.
Well, I think you lump yourself in there sometimes. Hour is like, what's beyond long form? Is there like infinity form content?
Yes.
Don't think of Avengers, by the way.
Too late.
Yeah. Okay. But again, finding where there's more of them and then creating a plan to connect with them.
Yes.
Figuring out how you're going to connect with them. You can't just roll in there, kick the doors open and be like, here I am.
Yeah.
Because they don't care. So
yeah, and that's circling back to my point of this is how you inject new life into your marketing efforts or into your growth efforts, whatever it is. If you're feeling stuck in that, this is how you do that, is by finding where like a new target audience is, or a new area of readers or customers or followers, or again, whatever your goals are, and figuring out how to get in there with them, how to start talking to them, and how to bring them, always end goal, bring them back to your content and onto your owned land and not rented land.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I know that also, I kind of realized as we were talking about this, like, all of this sounds very vague. We didn't really give you like specific step-by-steps on how to do this, really. That is because all of these things are so specific. They're so unique to the individual author that's doing it. Like, I can't give you step-by-step on how to find exactly your specific target audience without knowing exactly what you're writing and who your target audience is, So that is something that you have to figure out. And that's going all the way back to the beginning of this episode where we were talking about how like it's kind of a different path to success for every single self-published author.
Yeah.
That is absolutely the case, because it is so defined by the specific choices that you make, by the specific niche that you are writing in, by who you're targeting, what your goals are, all of that. So all we really can do is kind of give you like high level understanding of what you should be doing. And then it's up to you to kind of like craft that.
This is also where, we talk a lot about networking and going to events and things like that. And a big part of that, as we've already talked about in several episodes, is having the ability to learn from others who have forged this path already, or who are reforging new paths into new audiences, and kind of learning what they did and what worked and what didn't work. You can't always copy it to a degree, which I think is what you're saying.
Yes.
But again, understanding how they did it and the results they got will kind of help you understand how you might try it and what results you might expect, or how you might have to, do the same thing, but maybe with a slight variation to better align with who your audience is, or who your intended audience is, or things like that.
Yeah, exactly. We were at Katie Cross's session at Author Nation, which was fantastic. And one of the things that I loved about it was that she was super upfront right at the top of this, and reiterated several times throughout the session that like, I'm going to share my path to success, and I'm going to tell you right now, some of this is not replicable. Like, some of this is just flat out like not sustainable for other authors to do. And I'm not telling you to try to do this. I am just like telling you how I got where I am today, what I did, what worked, what didn't, and like giving you the layout so that you can kind of figure out how to apply that to your own efforts.
Yeah.
But she was really upfront about like, some of this is just not doable. And I really appreciated that she was like, yeah, this is like, I mean, I'm pretty sure I've referenced this on air before, the session that I went to about how to like, I went to a session years ago at BEA that was something about like viral like brand marketing for a specific book or whatever it was. And the first step of it, like literally the first step in the session was somebody's review for this book on Goodreads went viral. and brought a bunch of new traffic to that book. And I was immediately like, well, this entire session is a waste of time because none of that is replicable because you cannot make something go viral.
Yeah.
You can only hope for virality.
If you're ever somewhere and you see there's a session on how to make something go viral, don't go inside that room.
Yeah.
If there's ever a video that has a title that says, here's what you can do to go viral, don't click on it. It's clickbait. There is no way to ensure that you go viral. That's the point of it. So 100%. But again, what you can do is you can learn from other people who have forged this path, or again, through networking and through talking to peers and other authors and creators and entrepreneurs, you can get a better idea of how to start piecing together your own path and understanding how to get results from some of your activities and what those results mean. There's other things you can do, but I think ultimately piecing together a lot of these things with some other marketing tactics, communicating with peers, talking to other people, paying attention to what other people have done, and where that may or may not, change for you, I think is probably the easiest way to get to a strategy for marketing and selling your books in a more successful and efficient way. You have to understand that these things that you're doing, again, whether you want to agree to this or not, you're building a business. And so everything you do is a step towards sustainability, long term. I don't think anybody's in the business of books for a short term type of payoff. It's not the industry for that. So, if you want something like that, maybe try your hand at crypto or something. But, obviously I'm not a financial advisor, so don't do that. But, the point is it's a long game. If your goal is to be an author, that's your career, that's your title, that's what you do. Or as Lauren said, that's your job. It's a long-term thing, and you have to plan and build appropriately.
It's a long-term thing, and it's also it's a long game in terms of finding success. It's not even a long, it's none of this is going to be an overnight thing in any capacity, whether it's, finding your audience, selling X number of books, becoming a prolific author with a healthy backlist of books, anything like that. We did Lulu and The Tilt conducted a survey last year that was a content creator and content entrepreneur survey. And the average for the people that responded to it was 18 months to build their business to a sustainable level. It's not an overnight success. It's not something that you're immediately you're going to try something new on your marketing efforts today, and next week you're going to have suddenly sold 100 more copies of your book.
Yeah, marketing is a game of patience, for sure. And again, it's something where you need to do your homework though too, because you can waste a lot of time and a lot of money marketing and get zero results. Mm-hmm. So do your homework up front. Have some patience. But again, at the end of the day, all of these things that we're talking about as well in other episodes, these are things that when combined, what you're doing is building, again, a pathway to a sustainable business, understanding how to create reader personas or buyer personas, how to use those to find new audiences, to grow your business and to grow your sales pipeline. But then also understanding how to incorporate, direct sales for customer data, to take that customer data and then remarket with it to continue the cycle of pushing into new audiences and building a much broader and larger customer base, I think is the goal there. So, understanding you can't measure things if you don't have goals. You can't understand what your success rate is if you can't measure. So I can't emphasize enough how much of a circular sort of cycle this all is. And you kind of have to do most of these things in one way or another, do them your way, but you kind of need to do these things to make sure that you're ensuring some sort of long-term success, whatever your definition of success is.
Which you should have.
Yeah.
That's an important part of this as you're doing this, is you should have a definition of what success looks like for you and what your goals are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, success is just access to really good coffee.
Okay. That's it?
And pizza.
Wow. Oh my God. It's driving me crazy.
I'm easy to please.
You know what? That's important, honestly.
I'm not easy to please, but coffee and good pizza are important.
That's fair.
Yeah.
One last piece of advice that I want to give, as we're like, zooming out on this, is like I said with the webinar, the Joe Polizzi webinar that I'm going to have linked in the show notes. Look for advice and look for success stories and look for marketing tips and stuff like that and growth tips outside of your genre. You don't limit yourself to only looking at, if you're writing mystery thrillers, do not limit yourself to just looking at how mystery thriller authors grew their brand and achieved success. Look outside of that box. Don't even look at fiction authors. Don't even look at authors. Look at other kinds of growth success. Look at other kinds of content creators, content entrepreneurs. Pay attention to the things that work on you. That's always one of the things that I find really funny as somebody who works in marketing, is when I can tell that I am being marketed at, but also it's working on me.
Effectively.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, like we were talking about Spotify Wrapped.
It makes you mad happy.
Yes.
You get angry, but you're like, man, that was really good. That was cool.
Yeah, like I recognize what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And I'm annoyed that it's working on me, but I'm also like impressed, and I can't stop it.
It's like the tractor beam in Star Wars when they're sucking in, onto the Death Star. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, or like that great moment in Rise of the Resistance when Kylo Ren starts pulling the. Oh, I love that. But yeah, I mean that's the kind of stuff that, pay attention to that. Note those things and note what works on you, and then try to figure out how you can turn around and apply that to your own efforts.
Perfect. Thanks.
One other thing that I did want to I just said that was one last thing, but one last thing. I do want to recommend Spark Toro as a tool.
It is a great tool. For an individual person, I don't know what their pricing is. Oh. I know what it is for us as a business. I think we have 10 seats, and it's about $1,300 a year for 10 seats. I don't know what it is for an individual for one seat, or if they have pricing for one. But it is an amazing tool for doing audience research. If they have a personal plan, I would suggest trying it out. It is a great tool.
They do have they have a free trial plan that is 5 searches a month. That's totally free to use. Mm-hmm. And then they do have a personal plan that is $38 a month.
So, yeah, if that's within your means, I would highly encourage you to try Spark Toro. Lauren is right. It is probably the best tool we've ever seen for finding, for doing audience and persona research, essentially. Mm-hmm. So we won't go much more into that because we're not paid by them, and we like them as an organization. But at the end of the day, it's just a really good tool for doing what we've been talking about today. And I think well worth, that price tag that you just threw out there. Yeah. At least for a month or two to try it out. But yeah.
Or try out the free version and see if that's helpful to you. And if you want to dig deeper into it, then try a month or two of the paid version.
Yeah. Let's say it one more time for the people in the back. Mm-hmm. You want to niche down, right? Let's start there. If you're a romance writer, great, but can you niche down? I've seen or heard some pretty crazy subcategories of romance. And while it's, to me, crazy or funny, it's very smart on their part. Yes. Like I've met an author at an event that their subgenre or sub-subgenre was like cozy Christian cowboy romance, or cozy Christian clean cowboy romance, or something like that. And I was like, wow. But she does very well for herself because she's found that niche audience that existed somewhere. Nobody else had really found it. Started, tailoring her cowboy romance to that. And then now, if she wants to, can scale back out from there. But find your niche, build some personas so you kind of know who you're writing to or for. Use that to find more audiences, or couple that with tools, AI or Spark Toro to help you find more audiences, and then start the cycle all over again. Yeah?
Yeah.
Great. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Later.
To learn more about this episode, check out the show notes on publishprosperpodcast.com. Publish and Prosper is brought to you by Lulu.com. To hear more episodes like this one, please like and subscribe wherever you listen. Thanks for tuning in.